Firstly, while I was sitting at the back and listening to the Bhopalis or Supariwalas, whatever you want to call them, one gentleman in this room is likely to have a change of surname before the contract is over. I would like you to meet Karan Bhaskar very soon. Okay, let me tell you that yesterday evening we had a strategy meeting. I was telling that to Mangesh Bagle and Hite and a couple of other people, including Hetal. Something very interesting happened yesterday evening, and it has to do with a name that is featured very prominently this morning. And this gentleman is the inspiration behind my talk. I don't know whether he's professional or not. That's for you to decide. But you'll figure it out. But first and foremost, do you want to hear the good news or do you want to hear the bad news? I've got two pieces of news with me, or rather two pieces of very divergent news for you. How many of you want to hear the good news? All right, okay. These guys are hungry for some interesting information. And what about those guys who want to hear the bad news? I can see many of you are undecided. Okay, let me tell you first, looking at the fact that the good news is in majority, that while I was sitting at the back, I got an SMS. And the SMS said that I have an aunt living in West Africa who, as she's died, has remitted 500 million pounds to my account in Barclays Bank. It's a different issue that the aunt looks a lot like Isar Qureshi. But fact is that it's a Barclays account, and I'm slightly worried in the age of money laundering as to how am I going to be its legal beneficiary. I have a certain reputation, unfortunately. So I've decided to donate all of my money to all of you people here. Are you happy or not? For heaven's sake, you are enriched by 500 million pounds. Okay, all of you, I'm going to send an email back, and I shall be using Isar Qureshi's email address and his mobile phone number. Point number 2, let me tell you the bad part of the news. The bad part of the news is that I think this is supposed to be an inspirational talk. But I have chosen to rebrand it. And we shall call it the perspirational talk. Do I see somebody sweating behind the collars? You guys are actually taking me by surprise. Are you ready to sweat? Yeah? Okay, let me tell you what happened yesterday evening. We had a strategy meeting where some of the brains trust of the Dale Carnegie Training Company huddled up together. And while we huddled up together and the meeting went on and on, after all, meetings are supposed to be going on. And when it got over, I walked down our construction house building, and this is as real life as it gets. And you'll be soon seeing some very interesting people blushing beetroot red, and as in good Dale Carnegie tradition, I am going to expect them to stand up. So I came down the construction house, and Pallavi was doing some kind of pyrotechnics with her Bollywood presentation. So I waited downstairs. And while I waited downstairs, Hetal came, and I was leaning on a car, and she had to very politely tell me, "Excuse me, but I want to go home. Would you mind moving?" So she said, "Hi, Sanjay, how are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing great. It's been a long day, yeah?" She said, "Yeah, sure." Then she just dangled the car key in front of my eyes, and I got the message, not in a very subtle fashion, that she wanted to move on. So I stepped out of the car. Now, there were a bunch of 4 people who were sitting in another car. And I'll tell you who the 4 people were, because the guilty party I can see is already sweating behind the collar. Aren't you guys getting curious what I have in mind? Yes or no? Yeah. All right. So as I stood there, and Pallavi was still, obviously working on who was going to be partnered and who was going to be Dilwale, and a car just left our building. Now, if you look at, all of you have been to construction house. When you exit it, you got to turn left, right? Yeah, you got to turn left, and then you can go wherever you want. But this car, driven by a very dynamite Dale Carnegie person, with 3 other occupants, equally brazen and shamelessly flouting all the rules, got out And they turned right in such speed that Michael Schumacher or Lewis Hamilton would have stopped driving the F1 car. Believe me, it was quite a novel turn. Because I was standing there, and the car took a turn, and there was a screech, and it went zoom to the right. And at dramatic speed, believe me, if something else was coming from there, right now we would have been attending the funeral of 4 former Dale Carnegie employees. And that car turned to the right and disappeared before I could say, Isar Qureshi. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that actually formed up my theme for the talk. Yesterday, we were in this very closed room with the Firoza engineer breathing very heavily in and out. It's a womanly thing, but it's horrible when you got a bad cold. And so by the time I reached home, I discovered that, I gave a nice sneeze. And, they say sneeze in our good old Hindu tradition is not particularly very auspicious. So I reached home, and the first thing I did was dig my face in this big steaming, kind of vapor. And therein, all I could see in that vapor rub and that Vicks smell was the face of Isar Qureshi staring back at me from under the vessel. So I want to first start by telling you, Isar, professional or not, but you are my inspiration. And that brings me to the real message of this talk. What did Isar Qureshi and Mangesh, I don't know who the other two Johnnies were. Can you all four stand up, please? Ladies and gentlemen, here are these 4. And there you have another suspect. 4 guys in this car, after having just done a very diligent Dale Carnegie strategy meet, where we talked about doing it all right, had the moment they stepped out of the office, they took what? They took a shortcut. And now, would you mind giving them a hand? It can be louder than that. All right. So, you can have a seat. I don't think we can continue with the applause. The point I'm trying to make is the fact that what we did there was a shortcut. And that's what I want to talk about today. The talk is called The Professional for only one reason. And the reason is that, shortcut can become a way of our lives. And I'll try and, pull up as many examples as I can. Can you think of one that you believe can best match anyone in both in theory or in something in your experience or something that you've read, where you've heard of an amazing success happen, but the person did it in a roundabout way, just like the way Isar perhaps drives a car? I mean, it's for you to just imagine that. Yeah? I mean, Isar is, as you can know, one of my blue-eyed boys, and I have a habit of whipping them once in a while. So I can tell you for a fact that, a couple of months ago, when everybody was talking about Tendulkar and his retirement, I met a journalist from one of the TV channels. And we were about to go into a panel discussion to find out whether Mr. Tendulkar should retire or whether he shouldn't. A topic that consumes the nation as much as it does about whether the GDP growth should be up or down. I can tell you what the journalist told me. He said, you know something, Sanjay? This morning I was at the MIG Stadium in Bandra in Mumbai. And he said that at 5:30 in the morning, Tendulkar was there at the indoor stadium practicing. A man who scored more runs than anybody in Test cricket. A man who scored more runs than anybody in one-day cricket. A man who's perhaps the country's biggest celebrity and a national hope and a motivational example. He practices religiously for 3 hours after having scored so much, knows the technique better than anybody else, the flash, the big hit, the defensive stroke, the shot through the covers, but he was practicing it more religiously than you can ever imagine. And ask yourself that big question now. But that's what I want to dwell on. I've written a couple of points to share with you. That end of day, if a master technician and the world's greatest player in the peak or right now in the November or the October of his career can still practice so much, is that a lesson or not for us in terms of what professionalism means? Any thoughts? You know, we all tend to tell ourselves very often that because we have done something a number of times over and over again, that we are masters of the universe. And yet, as you think about it, the better you become, the bigger the heat on you. Because who has ever told us that excellence has a limit? Go open those book of quotations, anyone, and tell me if there's any quote that says that excellence has a limit. Which is my way of also reminding Firoza Engineer that when I take the mic and you give me 30 minutes, Pallavi will tell you I normally take 60. No limits, ladies and gentlemen. Excellence, if you'll please keep one thing in mind, okay, is something that you got to keep working on. It's a continuous, ongoing process. I'll give you an example, and I'll link it down before we end to a very crucial fact. Barack Obama. Much in the news in the last 2 weeks for one particular reason. One terrible debate, and the first debate, that saw him lose so, shall we say, desperately badly, that by the end of it, his ratings with the American public fell drastically. Here is a man who's a gifted natural speaker. Here is a man who has been the president for the last 4 years. Here is a man who's probably the best known international figure in the world. And without doubt, the most powerful man in the world because he has his fingers or on the buttons that can tomorrow destroy the universe if he so chooses to. So if you and I are alive today, it's all thanks to Michelle Obama. But I can tell you for a fact that end of day, that's the man. And he had a debate with a guy whom a lot of people called Mitt the Twit. That's what people called Mitt Romney, the Republican nominee. What happened to Obama in that debate? Obama chose, perhaps, as I say, perhaps, a lot of people give him benefit by saying he acted presidential. You know, it's like sometimes the role that Pallavi and I have to perform. Like when I come here and she comes here, we have to tell ourselves we're executive director. So maybe I can't be as outlandish, weird, nasty, outrageous as we would love to be. All right? So the point I'm making is that somebody told Obama, you ought to be extremely presidential. So Mitt Romney is the opponent, so he's going to come for you. But you act larger than life and behave and act like a president. You don't have to hit back. If the other guy hits under your belt, you just tighten your belt. Don't go and hit him back at the same level. But unfortunately for him, the people of United States like sound bites, like I guess we do every time at 9 o'clock in the night. We love sound bites too. Mr. Obama's popularity ratings slumped, and overnight, Mitt the Twit became Mitt the Hit. And one debate, ladies and gentlemen, one debate, something like what you're witnessing today with people come and leave with each and every presentation and performance, it changed dramatically the landscape of the presidential vote. Now ask yourself this crucial question. 90 minutes. 90 minutes. Shah Rukh Khan says 70 minutes in Chak De. 90 minutes of a debate televised to an audience of over 200 million people could decide who is going to occupy the White House for the next 4 years. Think of the importance of every little activity that can and has to be undergone at the highest level of success. 90 minutes could be the game changer. Overnight, the Republicans who had given up on Mitt Romney began to believe that Mitt Romney was a potential presidential winner. Even as you and I talk, the race is neck to neck. And this after the fact that when the second debate happened, Barack Obama took on his own natural avatar. He was assertive, he fought back, he was prepared. Perhaps he was so even in the beginning. But a lot of people believe that the first time round, he told himself, hey dude, you're the president. You know it all. People love you. You're a Nobel Peace Prize winner. You have been there, done it, seen it. This guy is still a pretender to the throne. And perhaps complacency did set in. It could also be arrogance. Complacency and arrogance are two terms that no professional can ever have in his lexicon. And what happened was that Obama fought back. And the second debate was won. But the crucial point that you got to keep in mind, that the second debate, when it was fought, Mr. Barack Obama, the night before and days before that, stayed awake nights to figure out what could be his big moment. He studied everything that Mitt Romney did and did not. He looked at all the places where the holes were there that he had failed to puncture even deeper. And he was more prepared than ever before to look at where he could have his scoring points. Even the President of the United States of America, a gifted, phenomenal speaker. Many people believe Barack Obama is won it thanks to the gift of the gab, unlike our politicians who have the gift of the grab. I mean, the fact remains, end of day, the truth is that it could be the big game changer. A professional, frankly speaking, has no margin of error. And that's a hard reality of life. How many of you in this room, and all of you have heard of Barack Obama, we just talked about him. But I'm going to throw up in front of you a name that I believe at this point at least one person in the room knows. As for the rest of you, I'll be happy if you do. Have you heard of a name called Peter Pelczynski? I know one man does. I just made a very subtle eye contact with him like lovers do in Bollywood films. It's a male, and it isn't my wife, obviously. How many of you in this room have heard of Peter Pelczynski? Because I'm going to give you that story to tell you why, as a professional, your biggest challenge in Dale Carnegie, when I say you means all of us, obviously, is going to be about how we are ready to grope with the challenges that hit us when we have to change. Anyone who's heard of it? Okay, Vishal Dhar has, unless he's chosen to forget about it when he cut his hair. But I can tell you for a fact that there's a character in reality who existed by the name of Peter Pelczynski. He was by name, can you guess which country he belonged to? Poland, not too bad. Closer? Russia, bang on, absolutely. Russian guy. In 1901, he was a brilliant chemical engineer. It so happened that Pelczynski worked for the Russians, and he was so brilliant that he was assigned to work on the coal mines, the Russian coal mines, in a place called the Donner Reserve coal mines. Pelczynski was a genius. So he was hired by the government to go and study how the coal mines could be made more productive. He went to study the coal mines and found that the working conditions were terrible. The things were indeed not too good. People had to stay in extremely awful conditions. They were getting very little salary. The food was terrible. Their dormitories were stuffed up. They didn't have enough time to sleep. They were made to work like horses and donkeys. So he wrote a report to the Russians, which that time you still, in a sense, the Soviet Union was not yet born. And he wrote to the Tsar and he said, "Excuse me, sir, but I think the problem is not with the coal mines. The problem is the way we treat workers. The problem is the way we treat human beings." Now, the Tsars were the dictators. They did not like his statement because they thought if this report goes in the hands of the workers, it will create a major political crisis. So they quietly shifted him out to a place called Serbia. All of you know Serbia? Cold, frozen. It was like the capital punishment area. You were sent there if the government wanted to banish you. So he was sent there. He was given a terribly awful job and he got bored, and at some point he migrated to Western Europe. He reached Western Europe and he was a brilliant guy. So he started working on new research in engineering and management. He studied in Paris, in London, in Amsterdam, Hamburg. And before long, he had become so famous in Europe that the Tsar wanted him back to work with his government. Pelchinsky went back and became advisor to the political leadership of Russia, or shall we say Soviet Union. He was a brilliant guy. So at that point of time, the Russians or the Soviets wanted to make the biggest dam in the world, the biggest steel plant in the world, the biggest nuclear reactor in the world, and what have you. So what happened was, when they made these big projects, they asked him to give them advice. Pelchinsky was famous for being absolutely robust in his honesty. So he wrote a report where he said, don't make the biggest dam because you'll damage the ecology and the environment. He said, don't build the biggest steel plant because you'll actually create larger degree of crisis in terms of the way you will waste your coal reserves. And he pointed out that all these prestige projects that the communist governments were doing was not really going to help the people of the Soviets. They did not like it at all because they thought this is not what they wanted. So they promptly rejected his entire suggestions. And over a period of time, he was ignored and neglected by the Soviets. 1928, on a dark night of April, around a dozen Soviet policemen came knocking at his house. Pelchinsky was picked up by the Soviet police. He was never heard of thereafter. He disappeared from the face of the earth. His wife, who was also an engineer, was picked up a few months later, was never heard of. As were around 3,000 engineers. This was in the year 1928. Take a pause. 60 years later, 61 years later to be more precise, all of you know that the Berlin Wall fell in 1989? Yeah, everybody? Yeah? It's a quiz question, so be ready for it. Okay? 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. And exactly in the same year, there was a demonstration in Moscow by roughly 250,000 people demanding better wages, better living conditions, better health, better whatever. I mean, salaries and benefits and family allowances. 61 years later, the president of the USSR was Mr. Mikhail Gorbachev. And Mr. Gorbachev was to witness something that had happened 60 years earlier. Because as it happened, the people were on the streets. And when they were on the streets, they demanded better conditions. And for the first time in the history of USSR, the government caved in. And that event, ladies and gentlemen, was to be the decline of the entire Soviet system that had held on for such a long time, which led to the rise of Boris Yeltsin and thereafter a market economy. But go back 61 years before. In fact, if you go back to 1901, there was a young man of 26 years of age who had pointed it out to the Russian government that there were problems in the coal mines owing to living conditions and the deprived state of the people who worked there. And the people who were out on the streets of Moscow demanding change that brought down the Russian system were actually from the same coal mine reserves from where Pelchinsky had first done his report. And end of day, even a government could not really sustain change. The government changed because they resisted change. And that's my big point, because in Dale Carnegie we keep hearing about this zone called the comfort zone. The government was in a comfort zone, right? Yes or no? Yeah? It's a comfort zone that you think of. Every time we think about anything at all, we say, let's get out of the comfort zone. And that's where the story lies. When you said get professional, it's about saying how much you are ready to embrace that change with the rapidity it deserves. You've got to embrace that change. You can't say that I'm being provoked into it and now I will try and adjust to it. It's about how are you able to finally actually embrace the change, because you know it's an inevitable aspect of your life. Barack Obama embraced a change over the last 10 days to boost his chances of becoming a US president. A Tendulkar practices day in and day out to become that new batsman before he perhaps calls it a day. And why not think of Usain Bolt? Think of Usain Bolt. Think of an Olympics. Think of an Olympics wherein a matter of less than 9.5 seconds, a world champion is born. But a world champion is born in 9.5 seconds. We open our television screens and the entire stadium is filled with people for the biggest event of an Olympics. But hang on, that big event is over in 9.5 seconds. The ultimate big showpiece of an Olympics is over in 9.5 seconds. And that's my whole theme of this afternoon. That behind those 9.5 seconds, over 4 years, is relentless hard work. Would you agree or not? Even if Vishal Dhar runs 100 meters, he will do it in 13 seconds. Or maybe 23. But he will still come and say, I'm just 14 seconds slower than Usain Bolt. That doesn't sound too much. But as you can know, by the fraction of a second is a champion born. And when we look at ourselves as professionals, it is that little discipline, seriously, it's that little discipline that changes the game. Yesterday, my dear friend Isar, he did what is very famously in India called Jugaad. Yes or no? Imagine if he was a pilot. Now imagine if Isar was a pilot. Now hang on, you're laughing. And I'll make you cry. Imagine if you were a passenger on that flight. Yeah, he would jump off without even a parachute perhaps. I mean the point I'm making, if Isar is on a flight and he's your pilot and he does a Jugaadu thing, he suddenly decides that I want to have some Sikh kebab in Hisar. You're dead. Imagine the pilot of a plane deciding midway that he should do something else. But that's exactly what you did, Isar, yes or no? Yeah? And how proud are you of that? I love it. I'm loving this. This is the best part of it all. No, I'm just going to tell you that end of day, it is this shortcut that gets us into trouble. Have you looked at a number of people at, I believe India can be seen when you try to approach a traffic island. You know, the lights are green, but everybody is honking. Where can I go, my dear friend? The lights are not yet turned green, it's still red, but you want everyone to get out of your way. You'll find a guy will just put his hand out and cross the road. You'll find India looking restless, impatient, and desperate. It's a way of our being. And as we celebrate today the big India story, I can tell you for a fact that it's this little Jugaadu thing that if we bring it to our workplace is when we begin to land into trouble. Whether you're a trainer or a salesperson. Salespeople, we have a lot of conversations. To use the famous euphemism, very animated conversations. But the truth is that the moment you begin to ignore those red flags, again, I'm using a Dale Carnegie term, you are basically saying, I'm in love with you, crisis. Come and give me an everlasting hug. Why would you do that? And you notice this is the reason why I'm bringing it up is it was a larger constitution of our DNA. If India and Dale Carnegie India and all of us need to make a difference, we got to recognize that it's a little things that really distinguish a winner from a loser. It's the small things. End of day, everybody put together, we are almost one common mass. We have similar thoughts, basically speak similar level of English and Hindi and communicate the same. But end of day, what makes one person different from the other is a little incremental attitudinal or shall we say just a passion or a performance focus or a commitment or a drive that makes one person stand out and the other perhaps takes a little bit of a backseat. I would like to, kind of try and keep this still focused within the time limits. And I'm therefore going to bring you up to one interesting character, a very interesting character, who I think in a great number of ways symbolizes what I call is the grittiness that I want to see in the professionals of Dale Carnegie. One is a guy who is right on the left-hand side in one of Pallavi's presentations was wearing a six-pack. And I would like Sai to stand up there. Sai, please do. I would like him to stand up for the simple reason that he went through a very, very trying and a difficult time for the first 9 months of the year. But when he started to hit his buttons right, he's been unstoppable. He's today with the highest over-the-target performance. He's got his thunderous claps. But hidden behind that, ladies and gentlemen, is a story of grit, is a story of perseverance. And I personally know, because I've worked with him in Mumbai, is the way he's hung in there, that one extra minute. And that's a famous thing I want you to keep in mind. Champions are those who hang in there the one extra minute. That one last second is where you really find the differentiator. So Sai, very well done and a great manifestation of a Carnegie character. The second is equally fascinating. And possibly, another gentleman like him who has started a stint in Dale Carnegie and has had a bumpy ride. But he's a true blue professional. Didn't give up. We were tough. We asked tough questions. He has gone through over the last 6 months even a great personal adversity. But he hung in there like a brave guy. And I'm delighted to tell all of you today, because when I walked in this morning, he called me by the side along with his best buddy. And he said, listen, I'm going to tell you something. He said to me in a hurry, he could have actually taken time to make a commercial of it. But he modestly took me aside and says, I want to let you know that this big contract is done. It's a 50 lakh contract. And I took his permission before I said, can I publicly announce it here? It's a 50 lakh contract got by a gentleman who over the last 7, 8, 9 months had serious questions hanging over whether he was going to be a success story here or not. And he's battled it odd, and I think he's taken the odds head on to make a big success story. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to request somebody to stand up and give him a real big applause. Vijay Dahima. Okay, we are at the last leg of it all. And as Vijay Dahima establishes, and I think so does Sai, and I think all of you do that day in and day out. And I'm not taking individual names, but I know trainers who work relentlessly. I heard the whole Bhopal story. I know how Nitin and I went to Bhopal on that evening. But this is a culture that I want to address. Professionalism is a culture. It's the way we have to be. There are no shortcuts. And, end of day, I think that's the real story. I used Isar as a nice flippant example, staring back at me. That is a nightmarish proposition. Imagine going to bed and dreaming of Isar at 4 o'clock in the morning. But I can tell you, when you hear the story of Kabul, I think you'll find in the midst of this entire team, perhaps one of the bravest men that I have known, because he risked his life and his family was way behind, because when you hear his deeper experience, it's remarkable. So just in case everybody thought that he's just my favorite whipping boy, a big hand for my friend Isar Qureshi. Last and not the least, but you know what? This morning when Pallavi and I were driving up, and the reason why I take a few extra minutes in these kind of talks is because these are few moments in my life where I do the talking and Pallavi does the listening. As you all know, in husband-wife relationships, husband and wives are never on speaking terms, because a husband is always on listening terms. So, that's one of, I think every married man will swear by that. Right, Nishit? Don't worry, she's not hearing. The point I'm going to make here is that end of day, I was telling Pallavi that today's meeting in this grand ITC hall, Uday and, everybody, Firoza, and I can see Vishal, and I can see Kavita and Rajiv and the lovely Neha out there. I can tell you for a fact, end of day, all of us are, this is historic as far as I'm concerned. The 100th year of an institution. The 100th year of Dale Carnegie, and all of us in this room, the Pune gang of girls sitting out there, the new groupies who have joined us here, including Sanjay Joshi, who's making a lateral move at one of the interesting points of his career. I think this is a fascinating moment for all of us to be here. Do you agree with me or do you not? God, you guys really look desperate for a meal. And I'm standing between you and I have no hurry to leave. Feroza, I'm too sorry. You gave me that code. This is my revenge moment. All right, okay. Well, in that case, there is no Dilip till lunch is over. Well, let me tell you, this is the 100th year of Dale Carnegie. And I just believe it's a remarkable opportunity for all of us to be together. There's something we did right to deserve each other. On this 100th year occasion, we are all in it together. There's one big collective unit, as you have heard in all the presentations before. It does not happen by one man's dream. It doesn't happen by one woman's drive. It doesn't happen by 3 people who are excellent. It doesn't happen by 10 people with a passion in their hearts. It happens when everybody needs to plug in. Are you with me or are you not? Yeah. If you are, then let me tell you something. 100 years from now, this is what you need to think about. Because I do think about it too. And I tell Pallavi that very often. 100 years from now, I do believe that none of us will exist. It's a hard fact. Some young man here may believe that he can pop in a lot of Viagra pills and pull it through. It won't happen. Don't fool yourself. Perhaps you might die earlier. But the point I'm going to make is very different. 100 years from now, none of us will exist in this room. These are, as they call, the historic moments. When we started the We Can, We Will mission 2012 that Pallavi started with, it was with a determination and a passion when we said we can and we will. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, irrespective of the rankings that come out in December, I want to congratulate each one of you from every team and department, CSD, IT, allocations, trainer, sales, the works. Well done, and you deserve the biggest applause for yourself. Well done. Number 2, as people like Sai and Vijay Dahima prove that you're not finished when you are defeated. You're finished when you quit. So let's have that grit in ourselves that we never say die. Yes or no? Yeah? Although we'll not say die, but 100 years later we still aren't there. Now that's a key question. 100 years from now, ladies and gentlemen, when another team of Dale Carnegie India assembles, and hopefully God knows where they will be probably be in a huge place with many 1,000 people in physical attendance and many on some digital media for all you know. Maybe at that point of time, they will remember a woman called Hetal, who every time she drives on the road, they will say she drove the profits of the insurance industry by 10 times. Probably. Yeah, every time they think of Huzan, they will say, there was a man who once looked like a Mexican drug warlord. And when they look at somebody like Aditya, they say this man could have almost toppled Rajnikant from his citadel at the top. When they look at Karan Bhasin, they'll say no man loved chicken korma as much as he did. The ultimate manifestation of a Punjabi. Yesterday at the strategy meet, we had Italian food for 25 of us. One man, and you won't believe this, I'm telling you the truth. Like Isar Qureshi's Jogadu story yesterday is the truth. I can tell you, one man ordered for himself pulao and chicken, what is that? Butter chicken. Butter chicken, the life's ultimate equalizer for a Punjabi. He ordered that and he ate all by himself. Now, these are characters that come once in our lifetime. Like Dilip Jairam, who is the ultimate obstacle between us and the great meal that I have personally chosen for you in the menu. It's incredible. We are all colorful, dramatic stories, like Mangesh Bagle. I love him because the only time I feel good about my hair is when I look at his. Like Vivek Wadhaukar, who looks like a Gandhi but is anything but Gandhi, I can tell you. I think we're a brilliant lot. Shruti Patni, she's like the Tufan Express, who is going to chop you down if you come in her way, and is relentless in her pursuit for perfection. She has to get to her destination, and she will. We are a fantastic lot. For Pallavi, who I think in a great number of ways epitomizes everything that Dale Carnegie in India stands for. Tough cookie. I've seen the way she's been involved with this entire, stuff. If left to me, we would be fighting to get into it because some check payment hadn't come to ITC Grand Central. But we are here today because of somebody's dedicated focus and attention to detail. I think we all bring our own little excitement to it. 100 years later, ladies and gentlemen, we won't exist. I personally will be a picture on the wall somewhere too. But that's life. But can we today resolve that 100 years from now we won't be, but right now we are. And this is the moment. Can we resolve right now that we will be differentiators in our professional lives as we go forward? Because what we do in our professional lives in Dale Carnegie in a great number of ways becomes the way we live our lives at a personal level too. So do I have your commitment, ladies and gentlemen? No shortcuts. No shortcuts. Remember one thing. If you want to be excellent, there is no shortcuts. And excellence is a bar that you keep changing and increasing as you live every day and have a great time with. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to let you know that you are a fantastic team and I'm very proud of you. Thank you very much indeed.